back to the show. My guest this evening has been here on this show twice before. 2 years, 3 years ago, we were talking about his Robin Hood uh, work or collection he was doing, and then 4 years ago, we were talking about sex, drugs, and super spies, which we're going to be talking about again today. And then 2 years ago, he and Mike Grell were our guests over on the Comic Watchers, talking about the 50th anniversary of Mike's work. But again, it's Jeff Messer. He's here again today, and he's running another Kickstarter for his stuff. So I figured it's been a while, and it'd be great to catch up with him. So let me bring him in, and we'll see what he has to say.
All right. There we go.
Sex, drugs, and sex, spies, and rock and roll.
It's people get hung up on that. It's sex, lies, and videotapes, like whatever. As long as they're reading it, it doesn't matter. But yeah, this is you can see it. This is the actual official UK Shift Presents UK. This is on the stands in England. It has been since last year. I got a few copies mailed to me from them in England. So. Preparing
nice.
The second issue coming up very soon, so it's moving right along.
Well, welcome back. It's great to talk to you after a couple of years. I mean, I know you've had some personal things going on that have taken up your time.
Yeah, but, it's we're going to do this every 2 years, whether anybody wants it or not. That'll be our policy. But yeah, it's interesting what life throws at you from time to time. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, which is supposed to be the safest place in the world from earthquakes, fires, floods, and hurricanes. And we got a big hurricane a year and 5 months ago, and it turned us into a third world country for the better part of the end of 2024 and well into 2025. But we're back. We're kind of
the rest of the country is caught up with you. So.
Yeah, it's stuff is happening everywhere. I know. It's one of those weird things where because there was no electricity and no phone service and no internet, and this was completely gone for days once the storm hit, and was sporadic for weeks, and the water system was down for 2.5 months or something like that, and the rest of the world had a better idea of what was happening to us than we did for like a week. So it was very surreal. And then we saw a few months later the fires out in Los Angeles and the West Coast, and very much the same situation. We were watching what they were going through, and they were themselves unable to really see the scope of it. So life is funny sometimes. It makes you stop and sort of reevaluate too. When you're forced to slow down. I read more during that period of time. Rediscovered my DVDs that have been put away in crates for a long time. It's funny. It's the things you find to get you through. But writing and creating, that's always kind of they come back to. It's like staying motivated for what's next. And I had a fairly small Kickstarter campaign that launched maybe 2 weeks, maybe a week, 10 days before the hurricane hit. And, so it was going, and I'm able to kind of like promote it and do things. And then suddenly it's like, boom, radio silence for 3 weeks. And I come back in at the end and go, oh my God, what's it going on? I didn't even know how it was doing. I didn't know what was going on. It finished. It finished successfully, but not nearly as successful as I would have hoped, because when you go off the grid like that, whether you like it or not, some of those things just kind of go away.
Yeah. Some things become a little more important.
Oh, for sure. I know. Absolutely. But yeah, the thing's better here. Everything's better here now. And you'd mentioned the Mike Grell thing, and I continue to work with Mike, and he had some health scares in the past 1.5 to 2 years, since the last time we talked, in fact. but he's doing much better as well. You kind of learn not to waste time. When you're young, you have all the time in the world to do the things you want to do and to create the things you want to create. And when you get past the half century mark, suddenly it's like the clock ticks a lot faster for some. So you don't want to put anything off.
And you guys just ran another John Sable Kickstarter for him, didn't you?
We did. It just ended a couple of days ago, and then people are still supporting it. Kickstarter now has this whole system where you can do late pledges and you can leave it open as a creator. And invariably there are people, no matter how much you share, you post, and you're great because you're always watching kind of over on the Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, now is I think a porn site. I'm not sure what it is, but it's.
I really don't. I really don't go there except to post our stuff, and we're trying to slowly distance ourselves from needing to have that.
Right. Well, I'm hoping, it's such a cesspool over there. I'm hoping that something like Sex, Spies, and Rock and Roll will attract an audience. I mean, I'll take the illiterate crowd that just want to look at the pictures. I'm cool with it. As anybody who's buying, as long as they're buying. But no, I see you post over there quite a bit. I always follow what you guys are doing, and it's great to see that you continue to have the dedication and focus to help. But back to the mic thing, yeah, we just ended that campaign officially, and hugely successful. And people, I was at Baltimore with Mike Grell this past October, and it was one of the first shows that he had really come back out on the road for after pretty much a year and a half of being in and out of the hospital and not being able to do cons. And Mike is such a great sort of funny, circumspect guy. We were there. It was just busy, just so slammed. It was one of the busiest cons I think I've ever been to with him. And about midway through the second day, he just leaned over and said, if I'd have known that the rumors of my imminent demise would have driven business like this, I would have spread them 10 years ago. But he's back. And he's kicking and going, and he's got a top secret project he's working on right now for a big company that hopefully they'll announce soon. We keep wanting to let people know, but it's kind of hush hush at the moment. But he's got big things, and he's about to turn 80 next year. So.
Well, again, and you never know. I mean, we just lost a great artist this weekend.
Oh, yeah, Tatiana Wood.
No, Jacopo.
Oh yes. Too many times you go on social media and you see it. There are generations of people that not as young as they used to be. It's fading. Some of them are fading fast. We've lost a ton of giants in the past 5 years or so.
Yeah. So for
on happier
people who on happier thoughts, for those who haven't seen an interview that we've done, tell us a little bit about yourself, both as a comic book reader and your journey as a creator.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, gosh, man, I think I was reading comics before, and this sort of checks out if you check the dates of the comics that I remember as being my first. I was, quote unquote, reading comics before I was able to read fully. And I always sort of credit my late grandfather. He would go down. It's very, and I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and so it's very hokey to say this, but he would go and hang out at the corner store, and shoot the breeze with whoever was there. And of course, they had a little rack of magazines and comics and things like that. And just for some reason, one day he went over and picked up a couple of comics at random and brought them home, and that was kind of it. I was hooked. I remember them. This is maybe a generational thing. I remember them being in the barber shop, when I was a kid, to go and get my hair cut. They had old, tattered, and just beat up comics. And back then, I was about to say back in the day, my kids just give me no end of grief about this sort of stuff. But back then, the shops would not have to send back the comics they didn't sell. They would just rip off the top third of the cover with the title on it and mail that back, and they would get credit for it. And most of those comics showed up in stacks of here's 10 for a quarter. So they were turning a profit off of these books that were missing the titles, and a lot of barbershops would just grab stacks of them and throw them in there. So I would read them in the barbershop and things like that. But it was just it was the right time. I mean, I was a teenager when First Comics and Mike Grell and Howard Chaykin and those guys came along in the early to mid 80s, and pretty soon after that, you had Frank Miller's Dark Knight, which just issue 1 just celebrated the 40th anniversary of coming out. And when that came out, I was 15, which is just that sweet spot, because it's a little bit more mature than say you want your mother to know you're reading. But they still, everybody still thinks, oh, those are the same. Those are the funny books, those are the same things from before. But we were all in on a secret, as teenagers. We would read the Comics Buyer's Guide every week, and we knew all the scoop that was going on. And we knew, oh, this stuff is not for kids anymore, even though technically I'm still a kid. So that was kind of how I came up. And in high school, I wanted to be a writer. It never occurred to me to write comics. It was one of those weird sort of things where it's like somebody else did these things. And even then, I was a huge Mike Grell fan. He was one of my favorites, and just never dreamed I would ever meet him or anything like that. But I'd started writing, and at first I tried to write science fiction, and that's too much work. Oh my gosh! And if you're writing science fiction novels, it's even more work. It's so dense, you have to explain everything. And then, I would see James Bond movies on the Sunday night at the movies specials on TV, and suddenly I want to write spy novels. And so the Sex, Spies, and Rock and Roll got its start, and it's set in the 80s because it got its start, back in the 80s, as hokey as it was. And when I picked it back up during the pandemic and decided, hey, getting into the comics business, helping Mike with his stuff, and sort of learning the trade, I thought I dusted it off and was like, I wonder if this would play now. And it plays more as retro kitsch, kind of stuff. Because the 80s seem to be permanently retro cool. Like all the other decades have their little, couple of years of people being into the 70s, or a couple of years of people being retro 90s, but the 80s are always around. And it's just one of those weird decades where pop culture, entertainment, music, fashion, movies, everything was just sort of at this frenzied pace of wild creativity, for better or for worse. Some of it was great, some of it wasn't. But people name check their top 10 favorite movies of all time, and you're going to wind up with half of them being movies from the 80s. It's just because it was like a fertile period. And so I was lucky to be impressionable during that time. And one thing leads to another, and here I am in my well past the 50-yard line of life, and I'm suddenly making comic books, which is wonderfully absurd on so many levels.
So, kind of give us a reintroduction to what the book is about. Who the characters are and where we find them.
Yes, and it's so weird. When I started down the path, and I was writing things that were current when I was writing the spy novels. In fact, I had a friend in high school when I was a sophomore and he was a senior. My friend Donald, he and I hit it off because we were both comics fans, and we were both writers. And so he's like, well, I want to read something that you've written. And I said, well, I'm working on this. And I showed it to him, and he read it and kind of gave me some feedback and was really nice about it. And in 2021, when I started posting things online about the comic series, he was one of the first people to pop up and go, "Hey, wait a minute. Is this that thing that you were doing like when you were 16?" It's like, yeah, it kind of is. But I've, changed it enough, not to say I've modernized it because it's still set in the 80s, but I've brought a modern sensibility to it, if you will, not a 16-year-old perspective. And one of the funniest things to come out of all this is I did it. I did the first issue, the first kind of 22 pages, and I found an artist who did some character designs, and I was just like, oh, these were spot on. Like, he really got it. He really got what I was going for, and he did the cover artwork that's that's really eye catching, and people seem to really dig. And I thought, well, I'm committed to it now because I've got an artist who kind of is dialed into it. And I thought, well, I'm going to be, very modestly ambitious with the Kickstarter. I'm not. I don't want much out of this. I just want to see if this plays, if this works. And it was during COVID, during that period, and my son, the oldest kid, was a senior in high school, so he was graduating in 2021. Kind of as part of that COVID class, the 2020 and the 2021 kids were like, you forget about it. I mean, they almost didn't have the last year and a half of their high school experience in a lot of ways. And so, there was one day I was just kind of talking to him and saying, listen, what is it that you got to start thinking about what's next? What do you want to do? And out of nowhere, he's like, well, I think I want to be a screenwriter, or I want to be a writer. And I was like, that never once had he indicated any such interest. And it was probably because I'd spent a number of years writing plays, and I would, drag him along to play rehearsals and readings and things like that. And so he'd sort of seen the world I was in creatively, and I guess he was intimidated to show it to me. But I kind of said, well, you've got to get a copy to me. You've got to send it to me, and I've got to read it and see what you're doing. And so he sends me this screenplay, horribly formatted because he doesn't know what he's doing. It's just like, it's all sort of just chutzpah and ambition and no sort of refined skill set. But the bones of it are there. Like, he's figured out enough of how to kind of start laying it out. He doesn't understand the specifics yet, because he hasn't studied it. So he sent it to me. I start reading it, and I just kind of stop after a few pages. I'm like, oh my Lord, this poor kid, he's writing the same crazy crap I was doing when I was, and it really struck me. I was like, this is, because I'd gone back and revisited what I had written when I was 16 and 17. And I was just like, this is just nuts. And so I had this wild idea. So I'm going to find an artist. I'm going to do the first scene of his thing and do it as a backup feature with my story. And a little bit of it was because I wanted to be a supportive parent. In a lot of ways, when I was growing up, my dreams and ambitions were not validated because it just wasn't a realistic thing, in the world I was living in. And I didn't want to be like that, even though there's that part of you that sort of kicks in like, oh my God, you need to come up with something better to do, because this is going to suck if you try to do this as a living. I know, because I've tried, similar things, and you just kind of want to steer them away from that. But I thought, no, I'm going to encourage it. So I had an artist draw it, and I was going to do it. And then I did the Kickstarter, and it hit its goal. I may have set the goal too low. It hit its goal really fast. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got like 29 more days of the campaign. What am I going to do? And I sort of started thinking about, well, I could use this as a springboard to other stories with other characters and kind of create a universe around it. And I would offer, hey, if we hit this goal, I'll add another 6-page backup. And so what started out as 22 plus 12, I'm a writer, so forgive the math. That's like 34, 36 pages. What started out as 36 pages, by the end of the Kickstarter, was 108 pages. I had added, it became an anthology book all of a sudden, out of nowhere. And I went, what am I doing? But, and when that happened, the funniest thing was that the focus of the main characters that I had in my mind for the story that I was writing shifted, and the female character on the cover sort of presented herself to me creatively and was like, these stories are going to be more interesting if she's the central focus point of the series, and the other characters are kind of just in her orbit, and it really changed a lot of how I kept the stories going from that point forward. And then so I was committed. I was like, I'm committed now to an anthology. I've got a bunch of 6-page part ones with to be continueds that now have to, be perpetuated into the next volume and the next volume and the next volume. And here we are, 5 years later, and I've gotten to the end of volume 7. I've got some material for volume 8. I've got some other spin-off stuff. The thing, it was probably just really, really crazy. But when I saw it, I was like, oh, people, it was the Sally Field. People really like me moment. I kind of went to a lot of these artists. I was just like, here are more scripts. Here are the next chapters. Just keep going. Just keep going. Keep going. And so I spent the better part of that time building up material that is waiting to be published. I literally have hundreds and more pages, maybe even close to 200 pages that have been drawn, scripted and drawn, not lettered and colored and so forth, but are just sort of waiting in the wings for me to sort of slot them in there. So it's kind of it's weird but cool, to see that all come together, and for me to learn something from it as well, to be open to changing lanes on what the story was I was trying to tell. And one thing informs another, it inspires, oh, what if this happened, or what if this happened, or what if this character and these other characters met and did, whatever. New stories keep popping up, and I get a lot of artists and other people. My friend Donald from high school, he first Kickstarter. So there's one thing, looking for gimmicks. There's a lot of Kickstarter gimmicks that you come up with, and a lot of people do multiple covers, which is ridiculously expensive if you start thinking about, oh, I have to print 8 of these covers and 12 of these covers, and I'm just like, that's just too much. And so I did a thing where it's like, hey, you could be featured as a hero or a villain in your likeness on the back cover. And my friend Donald jumped in and went, mine. I want to be a part of this. I want to be, a part of this, because I was there, in 1987, when you were starting out. And so I made him, by his request, kind of a villainous character. And we batted it back and forth, and I put the character in the story, which was kind of fun and kind of cool. And he really got such a kick out of it. And he's like, can I write the origin story of this character, like do a 6 or 8 page backup? And he's an artist that he worked with, and that's in volume 2. And so it's all these things sort of coming together, where it's just like the more the merrier. And I would have artists who were reaching out going, hey, can I send you my portfolio? Can I show you, what my stuff looks like? Because this looks like a lot of fun. And it's all, I went back and tried to finish the novel in the 90s, and I had like that elevator pitch, if you will, for how to describe this series. It's fun, high adventure. It's very primetime soapy, and it was kind of like, and I used to say in the 90s, it was like if you took the cast of Melrose Place and put them in a James Bond movie, that's what this is. And people in the 90s got that. Like, oh, okay.
That's specific.
Now I don't
They
know.
get that reference.
Yeah, it's a very dated reference. I don't know what the equivalent would be today, honestly. No, I can't think of one from a sitcom or a soap opera sort of standpoint. But it's all international spy caper. Kind of running around, chasing. And the 80s are always the best for spy stuff. Like now, like your modern spy movies consist a lot of people with headsets staring at screens showing you the night vision imagery of something going on. And I think the 80s are so much better because it's like, well, you had to go places. You didn't have a cell phone. You could actually go off the grid. You could conceivably sneak around without somebody being able to find you and track you. And you had to do the intelligence work, kind of more boots on the ground, if you will, back alleys and dark corners and stuff like that. And I thought, well, that's inherently more fun to me. And then you add, the fashion, and you add the music, and you add all that stuff to it. And it's like, it's inherently fun to do. And most
You
of
just couldn't,
yeah, go
you
ahead.
you just couldn't throw up a drone.
No, there are no drones to be flying around in any of these stories. Although I take that back a little bit. I mean, because my son's story is much more contemporary, and so I was like, how do I knit this all together, other than sort of vaguely sort of assuming this is just multi-generational, and that was liberating too, because it made me go back and figure out the backstory. Like there's one central story. Set in 1985, dealing with like a doomsday weapon that a rogue scientist has created, but now he's defected essentially, and he's afraid that it's going to be stolen and it's going to fall in the wrong hands, and so he asks the good guys, the spy organization that are the good guys, to steal it before someone else can, because he trusts them to keep it out of bad guys' hands. And of course things go sideways. But what's happened with the bigger story is now I've gone back to, it's like, well, who is the scientist? Well, he was probably a Jewish rocket scientist who was being held by the Nazis in World War II, trying to help them develop their technology. Maybe he had started this project then and then was trying to scuttle it because it's like, oh, if they figure out how to build this, then they'll win the war. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I can go backwards and sort of fill in the story as to how this all happened. And then the resolution to that story, which I know where it's going, ripples 10, 15, 20 years down the road past the end of the Soviet Union into the modern terrorism world and into the modern tech world. And so I do have stories that bounce around the timeline, spanning basically from like 1945 to 2017 within the story. But the crux of it and the focus of it is kind of in that 80s sweet spot where the big story happens.
Okay.
They've unleashed a monster when they it's like this, because the brain, your brain would just spin. It's like, how can I do this? How can I do this? And it's just thrown into this thing that will eat the East Coast at some point.
Well, it definitely sounds like the sandbox has definitely grown since we last talked about.
It really has, yeah. It's kind of bananas, but and it's, like I said, one thing leads to another, and then of course any creative person is like, oh, this idea leads to this idea, and it's like it just gets bigger and bigger. So I just having a blast. I mean, I think other than physically, mentally, this keeps me young. I can't handle uneven terrain as well as I used to, even as recent as 10 years ago, but mentally I'm jumping hurdles left and right.
So aside from having to, not have any way to follow the campaign, how has this current campaign been any different or presented any challenges that others haven't?
Um, it's kind of, it's kind of routine at the moment. I mean, a few of the early campaigns, when it was, hot, fresh, and young, just exploded. Just were huge, and it sort of settled into um, a consistent, few hundred people, a fan base. The people who are in it for the long ride, and once you get, especially on Kickstarter, once you get to a Kickstarter campaign where you're like, and here is volume 6, the new people, the people who are just stumbling onto it kind of go, oh, 6. It means I have to go backwards and I got to get 5 more of these things. And so it's really hard to pull in new people per se. When you get that going, which is part of the reason with the folks in England, the Shift Presents is the company in England, and they're putting out, and the anthology books I put out are 64 pages each. After that first one was 108, I went down to 64 because I'm like, this is a more manageable size. And the folks in England are doing 52 pages, 52 to 56 pages. And it's allowing me now with the kind of looking backwards and going, I was just throwing things at the wall early on because, oh my gosh, I just need to fill this with content. Now I'm able to kind of curate the order in which the stories are put into the anthology books in England. And so it's a different experience. There are going to be some exclusive chapters and stories that I'm going to give to them to publish over there first. There are going to be things in the Kickstarter books that you won't see in the British books. And so now that's a whole new wrinkle to have to navigate, but it's kind of fun at the same time. Because now I can unfold the story in a way that makes sense to me at the very least. Like the first issue here, it has the main story in '85, a couple of backup stories, and it has the World War II, the first World War II story that goes back and tells, the very earliest point in the timeline. And so it's all in there. So I'm sure the people reading it are just like, what is this? All over the place. What is this? But eventually it all kind of threads together. It'll all make sense at some point.
So, what are you offering for, for people who want to back the campaign as rewards?
A lot of it is standard, the book itself. Digital. I do a lot of digital. Shipping overseas has become completely ridiculous as far as the cost goes. And for one of the Grell books, the art books that were 200-page hardcovers, shipping to like Australia and New Zealand was starting to approach $90 and $100, which is more than they paid for the book. And so it's like, in a clear conscience, I can't ask, and I fully expect that if I were to offer the books and put the real shipping price on there, nobody would buy them. Nobody would want them. I mean, they want them, but they'd be like, I'm not going to pay $80 for shipping for a $50 book. So I've cut back a lot on overseas shipping between customs and the T word, the tariff thing, and all the nonsense that changes between Monday morning and Monday afternoon in some instances, politically and just from an insanity level. It creates problems for people who are printing overseas, they're ordering, they're shipping, and doing all this stuff. You don't know which countries are suddenly going to be like, no, screw you guys, we're going to raise the rates, or customs is going to become really, really harsh now. We're going to charge the people on the other end another $20 just to come and get the books from us. It's turned into a really obnoxious thing. And so I push digital to a lot of overseas backers. I'm just like, please, if this looks interesting to you, and I keep it at a low price point, if this looks interesting to you, I would rather you read it digital than just skip it. And so I get a lot of overseas people who are exclusively digital now. The books themselves, I'm offering, and in this campaign, I'm offering volume 6 and 7. It's been about a year and a couple of months since the last Sex, Spies, and Rock and Roll campaign for the anthology series. And I thought, oh, I've got enough to do both of them. So I'm going to do both of them. So I'm offering the next 2 volumes on this campaign, plus the spinoff title that it's the main story that I kind of pulled out of the anthology book so that I could run it as its own solo title. The new issue of that is in there. And then there's a one-shot. Like I said, I get artists who are always saying, hey, I would love to do something with you. And I'll send them scripts that are just 22, 24-page scripts or whatever. And it's just a self-contained story that fits into the series, but you can read it without having any further reference. And hopefully that will hook new readers. So I am trying to find ways. So there are 4 books being offered in this campaign that are brand new. There's a trade paperback collection of some of the stuff from before. There's lots of stuff that people can get from before as well. Just for giggles, I threw it out there again. Hey, if you want to be on the cover, the back cover, we'll turn you into some hardened KGB psychopath killer, whatever, so whatever you want, because it worked so well the first time. So why not? Why not try it again? So try to throw little things like that in there, because Kickstarter, it can be straightforward, but there's a lot of times that you have to have a few gimmicky kind of things kind of go in there. And then there's a campaign that we're helping with. One of our artist friends from Italy has put together a book, and there's a link on the site that you can support that. And if you support that one and ours, then you'll get like a nice bonus something or other. We haven't decided yet what it is. People love the art prints and the trading cards and the oh my gosh, if you ship something and you told them you were sending them a bookmark and the bookmark's not in there, the people will get apoplectic. Like, my bookmark, it's missing, and then you got to ship like a little piece of cardboard. It's serious. Yeah, there was I've seen it before. My campaigns, on Mike's campaigns. I work with Bo Hampton now too on some of his original publishing. He's got a campaign that's going right now. It's got like 8 or 9 more days on it, called 3 Devils, and it's crazy. People should check it out. It's a 12-issue series he's doing. That's a supernatural Western. So it's like the Old West, but it's got demons and 3 Devils is the title. So the main characters are sort of haunted by their cursed lives. Something has happened to them that has left them cursed, and they're on a quest together to try and resolve each other's situations. And the first story arc is the first 6 issues, and Bo is putting it out as a trade paperback right now, sort of in line with what DC and Marvel are doing with those economical collections that they're putting out, which are selling like crazy. If you go to the local comic shops, you can get the Watchmen for $10.
Yeah.
And people are gravitating to it. And so when Bo and I were talking, I said, if you could collect it and for Kickstarter's sake, at least get it down to 25 for 210 pages roughly. We could kind of get in on that sort of sweet action by going, hey, on a Kickstarter. And that's the thing about Kickstarter is people understand that they're going to pay $12-15 for a 22-page comic that you would pay $4 or $5 for in a store. But it's the nature of Kickstarter, because it is a creative endeavor, sometimes from the ground up. And if you want to be a part of that, then you can kind of latch onto it and support it, which is the brilliance of it, that people are willing to do that. The same people who complain about, Marvel just raised all their books to $4.99 or whatever. It's like, yeah, but you're on Kickstarter and you just spent $18 on that one. It's a different animal. So I was like, hey, $25 on Kickstarter for a book that you could easily do for 40, 45 under normal prices. Hopefully we'll find an audience. There's like, this is the first 6 issues. This is, the first story arc. It's inexpensive. It's a cheap buy-in. Jump on board, and it's doing pretty well at the moment. Like I said, it's got about 8 days left. Yeah, I mean, he's got a
So
solid group of backers that are following the regular series. But this is a different thing. You know, he'll have these books at conventions, and he'll have the ability to get new readers, kind of that retail appeal, direct at cons and stuff. So that was a fun thing to work on. Is putting that together, and it's got more of a pulpy kind of paper to it as well, because it's like, oh, it's like a Western kind of dime novel sort of feel to it, real pulpy. So I encourage people to check that out as well. And
I
if
know
you
that.
check out the Grell stuff, you can still get it on the late pledges. It's still running. So
Yeah, I know. I added the Bohampton campaign
oh,
to our weekly roundup also.
nice. Thank you. You do appreciate that. And he does too. It's a real passion project for him. He started it 10 or 12 years ago and got 4 issues done kind of before I don't say abandoning it, but he had to kind of put it on the shelf for a while, and then with the advent of Kickstarter, he's able to finish the story. He's drawing. I was at a convention with him over the weekend, and I was watching him ink an actual page with ink on paper of issue number 9. That he's working on now. So it's just really cool. As a kid, I would never have believed I would be sitting with these guys and doing these things, let alone doing my own thing. And it's kind of cool.
So kind of, in line with, because I know you're a big music guy and like to go to concerts.
Oh yeah.
Who were your top 80s bands or no, top 5 bands or songs?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, that's almost too easy. So, as a kid, I grew up and I listened to a lot of country music. And once I made my own, musical choices, when I was 14 or 15, one of the first music videos I think caught my attention was Huey Lewis and the News, If This Is It. And I was like, oh, the song is catchy. And of course, it sounds like a 50s, 60s, they had a kind of a throwback sound anyway. But the video was funny, and I was like, "Oh, this is clever. I get this," and so I instantly became a fan of theirs, all the way through their career. But the first rock concert I saw was Phil Collins, and it was like a 2.5-hour show, no opening act, no intermission, and I was just like the entertainment. I was spoiled, I think I saw Steve Winwood after that, and it was like an hour and 45 minutes, and I was like, "Oh, come on!" It's like, where's the other 45 minutes? But yeah, you're listening to use Phil Collins. Later, I sort of catch on to things a little bit later, like by the time I was, 19 or so, I discovered U2 and REM and all those things, the Police and Sting, I've listed quite a few, and I've gone back. I've rediscovered, because the comics I do, I try to put timely song soundtrack suggestions in the comics.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. So there's like a playlist that goes with it, and I've discovered bands that I didn't even realize existed until it was like 80s bands, like the Hoodoo Gurus. I only discovered them like in the past 5 years. And I was going, how did I completely miss this? And so that's kind of cool, is to discover things. I was such a snob back then. I'm so much more tolerant of bands like Def Leppard that I just kind of went, whatever, back in the 80s. It's like, oh, there's these hair, Poison and all those bands. Like, yeah, wanted nothing to do with them. Now, part of that nostalgia that kicks in, you hear those songs and it's like, all right, yeah, I kind of, peed all over this song when it was a hit. But now I'm like, yeah, all right, it reminds me of,
Yeah.
And so the nostalgia is pretty easy. The Pretenders are another one that just within the past 10 years, I really kind of rediscovered and got into the Pretenders. And it's fun. It's fun to go down those rabbit holes.
Yep. I know I'm 7 years younger than you are, but the 80s are my kind of um,
Yeah,
or my defining, for me too. And I've recently fell down the hole of bluegrass covers of like popular songs.
that's fun. That's
Yeah,
that's the mark of really good songwriting too. I think is that it can translate to other genres seamlessly. Like you
and,
don't have to force it; it works.
and we're talking like picking on like there's picking on Nirvana, there's picking on there's picking on the '80s. There's
Yeah. I've got one or both of the Dave Matthews band, the picking on albums, um,
yeah.
which are kind of fun, like weird but fun.
I mean,
It was like there was an album 20 years ago called Urban Renewal, and it was all hip hop, rap, R&B types of stars who did an entire album covering Phil Collins and Genesis songs, as kind of an homage. And you think, wow, that's really weird. But you can go back and think about it. It's like the drum, the beat. There's a lot of things that you can kind of attach to across genres.
yep. So as we kind of wrap up, because it is getting kind of late.
That's right. It's getting into the wee hours. And, even though you're 7 years younger, it's like, yes, you start looking at a certain time. You go, is it too early to go to bed now? It's like, oh, it's only
It's like,
7:30.
and tomorrow's one of those mornings I have to actually go into the office. So
Right. You got to be up, and you have to be remotely functional tomorrow. And it's being an adult is such a pain.
I know it is. And I have at least 10 more years of it before I can even think about.
Yes. Well, and you have kids too, right?
One.
What?
Yep.
One. We just shuffled our final one off to college, which is both a depressing thought and a liberating thought all at the same time.
Yeah. I still have a few more years for that because he's only in third grade. So.
Oh, but it goes, man. It goes at sonic speeds. So enjoy it while you can.
So why don't you give us one more pitch for the Kickstarter and the book, and where people can find out more about you and.
I'll kind of start at the last thing first, and then we'll work our way back. I mean, honestly, the easiest thing for me, and it is apparently the old people's social media, but Facebook is a wonderful tool if you use it right. I always love people who are like, oh, Facebook sucks, I can't do it. It's like, well, then you're not using it right. It's like you get out of it what you put into it, and so I use it mostly as just sort of a shameless self-promotion tool. So there is a Sex, Spies, and Rock and Roll Facebook page where I post pages and artwork and things, Billboard charts from 1987, or anything I find that feels like it fits with what I'm doing. I post it over there, and there's a few thousand people that are followers of it. I don't know why they're not all buying the books, but they're followers. I try not to give them too much information because it's like don't want it to be free. But yeah, that's a great place, and I'm over there, and I can be found and followed as well on Facebook. And there's one for the Robin Hood comic book adventures that I've been still working on. I've got the third one finished and being colored now, and the fourth of the series, which will be the final one, we'll start working on at some point this year. So yeah, plenty of stuff to check out over there. And and for this, if you like good, fun storytelling, a little bit naughty at times, a little bit sexy. That's the crazy thing about Kickstarter is there's a whole subgenre on Kickstarter that is that leans a little bit more toward the adult XXX kind of category.
Kickstarter After Dark.
Yes, yes, it is way after dark. But you look at it and you go, my gosh, these people who are just doing some of this stuff, uh, tens of thousands of dollars of support for it, and I've supported some of it, to sort of see what the competition looks like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, um, if I can, actually do a good story and be a little titillating and be a little bit funny about it. It's like most of the stuff is meant in a sort of funny, tongue in cheek kind of way, and people read it and go, "Well, that was sexy, but it was actually a good story too." That's what I'm shooting for. Is that I want it to be quality. I want it to be something, And again, we talked about. Um, I've now laid out this massive, 50-year chart of connection points for the story on either side of the 80s. And yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that's it's addictive to me as a creator to go, at some point 20 years from now, when I finally have run out of story, that people could read it all and kind of go, holy crap, this all fits together and tells one giant story, but also tells a lot of little pocket stories that stand on their own. Um, I'm kind of chasing that dragon right now. That's what I'm going for. So uh, you don't have to. I've gone to conventions before, and I've had all the 4 or 5 books on the table. And I've had people flip through them and look at them and stuff, and literally, somebody picked up volume 4 of the anthology book and was flipping through it, and it was like, this is chapter 2 of this story and chapter 3 of this story and chapter 1 of this story or whatever. And he goes, I want to try one of your books. I think I'm going to try this one. And I'm like, oh, it's like the 4th one. He goes, yeah, but I like the cover. Okay. Yeah, jump in. Don't be afraid to jump in, even though it's like 6 or 7, volume 6 and 7. And like I said, there's a one shot that is I'm heavily pushing on the Kickstarter right now. British artist Robert Howell drew it for me, and oh my god, it was so much fun working with him. And the art style is kind of unique and different, and it's a one shot. It's 24 pages, boom, story, you're done. But it gives you enough of a taste that you're like, I'd kind of like to know more about these characters. I'd like to see another adventure by these characters. So it's easy for first timers, but it's also great for anybody who's been along for the ride for the past 5 years, and still counting.
Cool. Well, it was fun catching up with you, and we'll have to
Yes.
not wait 2 years before we do it again. I mean,
No.
would love to have you and Mike back whenever you guys can talk about whatever you're working on, and
Yeah. I have to kind of push him in that direction. He's a little tech verse at times, but I've gotten him there. Like, the pandemic helped with Zoom and all that stuff. And like I said, he's got a top secret project. I will say that. The DC just put out the first omnibus collection of his Warlord series from the 70s. That's been selling really well, and fans have just been over the moon for it. And this next project that he's working on, as soon as it's announced, I've read the script to the first issue. I'm lucky to have backstage access, if you will, and it's mind-blowingly good. Like what he's going to do next, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people. And I told him not terribly long ago, it's like, hey, I'm here to help you have a Renaissance period for as long as you want it. We'll keep doing all of these projects, and he's promised me at least another 10 years, maybe 20. So we'll see.
Have you been reading the Gabriel Hartman Batman Green Arrow in Question?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
That slaps so hard of
it hits all of the right notes. I mean, talk about the 80s. I mean, it feels like, DC in particular, and I've had a chance to talk to Mark Waid about this in person, how it's like I think what he did with World's Finest, which is coming up on issue 50, So we're talking 4 years. 4 years ago, I think they were like, "Oh yeah, just let him do whatever he wants to do. What harm is there?" But it's so good, and fans embraced it so much. I think it's changed the course of how DC is approaching storytelling. They're hitting on all cylinders right now. A lot of their books are top of their game, and to bring out, and Mark Wade's thing is more silver bronze agey kind of throwback, that people our age are nostalgic for. And so when the Gabriel Hardman book came out, I was like, dude, everybody just jumped on that because they're like, it's like 1989 all over again, and even better, even better. I can't wait to see where it goes. And they're doing so much good stuff right now. It's a great time to be a reader.
Well, are you reading anything that you know are particularly enjoying that you would recommend?
Yeah, let's see. Gosh, the Batman and Robin year one, was that? I'm gonna Mark Wade
Yeah,
did
yeah.
like, dude, everything Wade's writing right now is golden. Talking about 80s and nostalgia, the Larry Hama GI Joe relaunch with Robert Kirkman's Skybound over at Image, just unbelievably fun. Just really, really great stuff. Super artists on the book. I mean, it's really that's great fun. I'm a Star Wars kid, so the Star Wars stuff that Marvel's putting out is interesting to me. We just had Captain America versus aliens in World War II, which was like I didn't know that I wanted that, but it was 4 issues of really fun stuff. So
Yeah.
everybody's hitting their stride again. I think we had a really long kind of low period in comics where neither company could really figure out what they wanted to commit to the characters being. And now they're just kind of going, just tell good stories. And I think that's the key, is just tell good stories, have good art. People will appreciate that. Don't overthink it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I've read the first issue of Fantastic Four: Planet of the Apes. And I was like,
Oh
how,
yeah. How is it?
it's pretty good. It's like, I was like, how are they going to make this work? But they
Yeah.
seem to, it's working.
Okay. Now, see, I'm going to have to check it out. I avoided it because I'm a big FF fan, and I'm always rooting for them to be, back on top. But I was like, oh, that feels just like a bridge too far. Like like Marvel really kind of whiffed it on the 1776 whatever. It's like
Oh yeah,
I was going to pick it up. My guy in the shop actually was like, yeah, you don't want to read that. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I was supposed to do a review of it for the site, and I read the first issue. It's like, I don't know what to say about it.
Yeah. Why does this exist? Yeah, but hey, swing and a miss, right?
The only thing that I would hope that they made canon was, I know that sometime in the Doctor Strange history, Clea claimed to have had an affair with Benjamin Franklin, so they better have canonized that. Because she was in the book.
That's the low hanging fruit. If they don't do that, then the series is a complete waste. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for taking the time this evening to chat. Always a pleasure.
Chad, it's so good to see you again.
Well, hopefully one day we'll meet in person.
We'll do it again. Yeah, I know. Just have to make it far enough north to a convention. Terrificon one day. I'm hoping. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, best of luck as the campaign. Kind of. You're in the home stretch, right?
It's like heading towards the final 2 weeks.
Okay.
16 days or something like that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Right? Yeah. And it could be less when people are watching this. It could be in the home stretch. So don't waste time. Don't hesitate.
Well, this interview will definitely be in Saturday's roundup, and we will continue to follow it as it progresses. And best of luck as you continue to excuse me, play in this sandbox that you've created.
Thank you so much. Yes, despite the white beard, it's keeping me young. So no
No,
points.
that's all that matters.
That's it. Just have
All
fun.
right.
That's it.
All right. Well, have a great evening, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks. You too.